Have you ever felt a little off the day before something went wrong and later wished you had paid attention? That's exactly what many stroke survivors say when they look back. Not sudden, not dramatic, just small signs that seemed too minor to mention. A bit of dizziness, a strange heaviness in one hand, a headache that felt different from the usual ones. Most people brush these things off. They blame it on tiredness or stress or simply getting older. But here's the truth doctors wish more people knew. The body often tries to warn us hours, sometimes even a full day, before a stroke happens. Many people don't even realize this, and that's exactly why this video matters so much today. Because if you know what to look for and what it actually means, you could protect yourself or someone you love. Stay with me because in the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly what those early signs can look like, why they happen, and what you should do the moment you notice them. This is very important, so watch until the end and you'll understand everything. Let's start with something most people get completely wrong. They think a stroke just happens, like a light switch flipping off. One moment you're fine, the next moment everything changes. But that's not really how it works for most people. The truth is quieter and honestly a little unsettling once you understand it. Picture this, an ordinary evening. You've had your dinner, maybe you're sitting with a cup of tea, watching television, feeling completely normal. And yet, somewhere deep inside, tiny blood vessels in the brain are already starting to struggle. Not enough to cause pain, not enough to make you panic, just enough to send out a whisper, a small signal that something isn't quite right. That whisper can show up in strange little ways. Maybe your vision blurs for a few seconds while reading the newspaper, and then it clears, so you assume it was nothing. Maybe your hand feels a bit clumsy while buttoning your shirt, and you think, I'm just getting older. Maybe you feel unusually tired in the middle of the day, even though you slept fine the night before. On their own, each of these feels forgettable. That's the danger. That's exactly why so many people miss it. Here's something that surprises most viewers when I explain it. The brain doesn't need a dramatic injury to send a warning. Sometimes it's something as small as one side of your face feeling slightly heavy when you smile in the mirror. Or your words coming out just a touch slower than usual, like your tongue can't quite keep up with your thoughts. Family members often notice this before the person does. A husband might say, "You sound a bit strange today," and the wife brushes it off with a laugh. That moment, that tiny warning, is often the one that gets ignored the most. Many people are making mistakes here, and it's not because they don't care about their health. It's because these signs don't look serious. They don't look like what we imagine a stroke to be. We've all seen the dramatic version in movies, someone collapsing suddenly. So when the real warning shows up quietly, wrapped in ordinary tiredness or a passing dizzy spell, the brain simply doesn't connect the dots. But now the main thing begins. Because once you understand why these small signs appear, they stop feeling random. They start making sense. And that understanding is what can change everything. Not just for you, but for someone sitting right next to you tonight, who might be showing one of these signs without even knowing it. So why does the body send these quiet warnings before something bigger happens? Let's break it down simply, because once you see it, you'll never look at these little moments the same way again. Think of the blood vessels in your brain like narrow garden hoses. Over the years, without you noticing, they can slowly become a little stiffer, a little narrower. This doesn't happen overnight. It builds up quietly through things like high blood pressure, poor circulation, stress, or simply the natural wear of getting older. Most of the time, blood still flows through just fine. But every now and then, for a few minutes, the flow gets briefly interrupted, a tiny traffic jam, so to speak. And during that short traffic jam, the brain sends out its warning signals, the blurry vision, the heavy arm, the slower speech. Then, just as quickly, the blockage clears and everything seems to go back to normal. This is very important to understand. Doctors have a name for this kind of brief warning event, and it's often called a mini stroke or a warning stroke. It can last just a few minutes, and because it passes so quickly, Most people convince themselves it was nothing. They don't call anyone, they don't go to the doctor, they simply carry on with their evening, relieved that it's over. But here's the twist that changes everything. For a significant number of people, that quiet warning is the body's last call before a much bigger event happens within the next day or two. So what should you actually do if you notice one of these signs in yourself or in someone you love? Let's make it simple, because in a moment like that, simple is what saves time. First, don't wait to see if it gets better. This is the mistake almost everyone makes. They think, let's just wait an hour and see. But time is exactly what you don't have to spare in a moment like this. Second, there's an easy way to check that many families have learned, sometimes called the F.A.S.T method. Ask the person to smile. Does one side of the face droop? Ask them to raise both arms. Does one arm drift downward on its own? Ask them to repeat a simple sentence. Does their speech sound slurred or strange? And if you notice any of these, that is the time to call for emergency help immediately, without hesitation. Third, pay attention to context. Was this after a stressful day? After skipping medication? After a long period of sitting still, like a long car ride or an evening glued to the sofa without moving? These little details matter more than people realize, because they often reveal patterns hiding in plain sight. Here's the part that quietly surprises everyone once they hear it. It's not always the person experiencing the symptoms who notices first. It's often the people around them, a daughter on a phone call who says, "Mom, you sound different today," or a neighbor who says, "You're walking a bit unevenly, are you all right?" These small observations, the ones we almost brush off out of politeness, can be the very thing that saves a life. And that brings us to something even more important, because knowing the signs is only half the story. What truly makes the difference is what happens in the hours and choices before that warning even appears. The quiet habits, the small daily decisions that either protect the brain or slowly put it at risk. Now let's talk about what actually protects you. Because understanding the warning signs is powerful, but understanding how to lower your risk in the first place, that's what truly changes the story. Here's something most people don't expect. The biggest protection doesn't come from anything expensive or complicated. It comes from small, steady habits repeated quietly, day after day. And once you hear them, you'll realize you already know most of this. You just haven't connected it to something this serious before. Let's start with blood pressure, because this is the quiet troublemaker behind so many of these warning signs. High blood pressure often has no symptoms at all. You can feel completely fine while it slowly stiffens those blood vessels we talked about earlier. This is why checking it regularly matters so much, especially if you're over 50. Not once a year at a checkup. Regularly at home with a simple monitor, so you actually know your numbers instead of guessing. Next, movement. Not intense exercise, not anything extreme, just consistent movement. A short walk after dinner instead of sitting straight down on the sofa. Standing up and stretching every hour instead of staying still for long stretches. Circulation loves rhythm, and stillness is one of its biggest enemies. Many people don't even realize this, but long periods of sitting, especially in the evening, are one of the quiet risk factors that build up over months and years. Then there's something people rarely connect to brain health: sleep. Poor sleep, especially irregular sleep, puts extra strain on blood pressure overnight. That cup of tea before bed, the wind down routine, the consistent bedtime, these aren't just comfort habits, they're protective ones. And finally, don't underestimate stress and emotional strain. Chronic stress keeps the body in a constant state of tension, and that tension shows up in the blood vessels too. Taking a few quiet minutes each day, whether it's sitting by the window with your tea, calling a friend, or simply breathing slowly for a minute, these small moments matter far more than they seem. Here's the twist that ties everything together. None of these habits are dramatic. None of them require you to change your entire life overnight. But together, day after day, they quietly lower the chances of ever experiencing those warning signs we talked about. And if you ever do notice one of those signs, in yourself or someone you love, You'll now know exactly what it means and exactly what to do. So here's what I want you to take away from today. Your body rarely stays silent before something serious happens. It whispers first. And now you know how to listen. Pay attention to those small moments, take them seriously, and share this with someone in your life who needs to hear it too. Because sometimes the person who notices the warning sign isn't the one experiencing it. It's the one who is paying attention. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.